Flipping it up and out. Bogut! Ariza's blocked by Bogut.
Good recovery by Andrew Bogut.
Let's get rogue.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues, the basketball series. Thanks again for joining us, myself and Mike Procopio. How was training, pro?
Oh, Bogues, training's great, man. Fucking no agents to deal with, no bullshit, just kids who can't really play that much, but there's no back talk, which is I'm not really used to that. I'm like, I'm ready. Anything that's like said to me, I'm ready to snap back because I'm just expecting it. Actually, nice kids. I haven't had that in about 20 years, so let's keep going with it.
Yeah, good. The young kids usually just are happy to do whatever you say. Now, before we get started, the most important news, pro, I got to ask you, you're a fellow American, I hope.
Yeah?
Who won the trade, pro? Russia or the US?
Oh, jeez. Fuck. Bogues. We're going to get into this right now. We'll talk about it right now.
We can just have a little bit of not a laugh. It's a serious matter, but someone said that Rob Pelinka did the negotiations for the US.
Oh, fuck. I'll tell you what, the internet is fucking undefeated. The internet is fucking undefeated. I mean,
I don't know what happened with that, but I mean, giving up a basic terrorist is interesting when they've got apparently there's a Marine still stuck in Russia. Don't want to get too political with it, but it was
I'll get it. It
was an interesting trade.
Hey, fuck that, Bogues. You know what? When's the last time I talked about politics? I'm not even talking about politics, but like, have you read up on both of these guys? Like the Merchant of Death and this other guy, Whalen, that's over there. Have you read into either one?
Not the American. I've read up about the Merchant of Death and how he was supplying arms and all that kind of stuff. I don't know much about the American.
So the American, like from what I read up on him and watched on YouTube. So the American, like, was a Navy. He was in the Navy, and I think he's retired. But anyway, he started getting some friends in Russia on the internet, like social media, whatever. Just sort of like met some people, visited them, once or twice, and got to know them. So he then goes to a wedding, from what I understand. He stays in this hotel. I want to say it's the Interpol Hotel, if I'm not mistaken, in Russia. And all of a sudden, the friend ends up being an operative from the Russian government. So it's not really his friend. It was just posing to be his friend. And I guess he visited them like once or twice already. So they hand him a flash drive. I guess he puts it on him. How he put it on him, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, like, somebody from the Russian government, KGB, whatever, comes over and says, "Look, you've got government secrets. We're going to put you on, we're going to put you in custody." So they've had him for 4 years under that for the espionage charge. So they've had him for 4 years. Supposedly he didn't do anything. Now, I don't know. Like, again, I don't know. But supposedly he doesn't do anything. He's over there for 4 years. And you would think that one of the most dangerous, non-ISIS terrorists, you would think that would have a lot of value to get assets back, and you would think that Whalen would be one of those, but I guess not.
Well, at least some future first round picks Russia should have thrown in.
Jesus Christ, folks! It's
2027 first round pick. But it's you know what's crazy though? Like what I was thinking about this, and for those not familiar, this is somewhat basketball. Brittany Griner, WNBA superstar, that got arrested in Russia for having weed in a vape pen, which is illegal in Russia. Whether you want it like it or not, it is legal over there. It became a political pawn in this whole battle, and Russia's given up basically a terrorist called the Merchant of Death, that's his name, for Brittany Griner in that trade. What's crazy is, pro, what's to stop countries just pinging some sort of citizen and then be like, "Hey, give us this guy back, we'll give you a citizen back." You know what I mean? Like, if it's someone with a name, like, making this up, LeBron James goes to visit, Russia one day for some reason, and then he gets taken and they're like, "Oh, give us back our three people that you've arrested for terrorism." Like, you know what I mean? What's to stop that happening? It's pretty kind of scary when you think about it. I mean, Griner got caught in the middle of it. She did do something illegal. I think we all agree that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years in jail is not the right outcome for that. Mm-hmm. But in their country, they have strict rules against those things. And then obviously it became a political pawn. But yeah, the trade was definitely interesting. We'll see if Brittany gets back on the court. But I wanted to open with a bit of a dark humour
only
start the podcast, but
the only thing I get out, the only thing that's fucked up out of this is she did the wrong thing. So we're getting behind someone who did the wrong thing. Look, I'm glad she's home, no doubt about it. She's a daughter, she's a wife, whatever. Like all the, she's belong. She's like she means something to a bunch of people. Obviously, she's a human life. You want her back. It's fucked up. She did fuck up, but like. We're getting behind someone who did something wrong. Now, the outcome, obviously, 9 years for that is rough. But that's obviously wrong but it's not our country. The biggest thing, Bogues, is she does something wrong, and she's gonna make out like a bandit with this book deal. Like she,
100%.
It's like a
Oprah.
seven-figure deal out of this. For doing the wrong thing. I don't care what people think. Is it right? Is it wrong? That's their rule, whatever. Like, and now we're awarding doing the wrong thing. And not to get political, but let's get political. There's about fucking thousands of people in jail in the United States that for marijuana that's been locked up for years. And not one fucking person is like, we need Brittany. Why? Because of basketball? I don't give a fuck if this is LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan over there. Like, that's not the case. The case is, like, we have that going on over here. And because of, like, your stature, we want to get behind you. That's where I'm like, fuck. Like, this is, like, again, I'm glad she's back and all that, but, like, that's where she's going to get rewarded for breaking the law, regardless if. Yeah,
Australia has that problem too. That's worldwide. We have had people that were famously the last couple of decades got caught for supposedly dealing drugs in Bali or overseas. They get arrested. I mean, it's death penalty in Bali, bro. And a few girls have gotten out of it. One girl there, one in Colombia, I believe. And they come back to Australia and they're celebrities. They're doing talk show circuits. They're getting paid for appearances. That's kind of disgusting. That's the down dark side of the media. So, but anyway, Rob Pelinka, great job there. All right, let's go on to our team of the weeks. We'll get to this one real quick. I got New Orleans, pro. They are balling, man. They are on a 7-game win streak. They've flattened Phoenix twice in the space of a week. I'll get into that series a little bit later. And they're playing really, really well. They're missing Brandon Ingram right now, who's probably their 1-2 option. He's their one option at times, and two when Zion's in the lineup, can move to the one when needed. CJ McCollum's in there as well, but Ingram's a big part of their team. He's been out. Herb Jones is it? He's been out. So they've had their injuries and they're just chugging along nicely. They're a very deep team. They have multi-lineups, multifaceted lineups. They can do different things. They're long, they're athletic, they've got shooters, they've got guys who can get to the rim and dunk on you. They've got a bruising center in Valanciunas. They've got a lot of lineups they can get to. And they've just grinded Phoenix down to a pulp these last 2 games. And, their physical, long style of basketball. So I've really enjoyed their growth. I think, I tweeted this a couple of days ago. This Phoenix New Orleans series is reminding me a lot of when I was at the Warriors and the Clippers had the Lob City era, where the Clippers owned the Warriors for a year or two when I got there, or for at least a year. And then it started to turn, it started to even out, and then all of a sudden the rest was history. This is a very similar rivalry that's brewing because they're both young, well, kind of young teams. Phoenix is young, a mix of youth with veterans to get to a championship. New Orleans hasn't had a whole lot of success, but they're young, kind of young and dumb in a way, but they got a lot of horses. They got a lot of guys that can play, and they beat them in the playoffs last season. So that rivalry is brewing. I really, really enjoying that rivalry. Phoenix is petty. Chris Paul doing all his nonsense. I think he elbowed Alvarado in the face today off the ball. He kicked his leg out on a 3-point attempt late. The defender got called for a foul. They went to a review and it got overturned, and Chris Paul got called for the foul. So I enjoyed seeing that. But New Orleans, pro, they're first in the West right now as we speak. So they're playing really well, and they're not fully healthy. So I like what Willie Green's doing down there. I think they've got a chance to. I think they're still maybe a year away, just experience-wise, but they've got every chance to get to the second, maybe even a conference, maybe scratch a conference finals this season, because I think the West is wide open. I really don't think there's an outlier. I think Golden State's going to sneak up again. They're playing better basketball, and they're going to start turning it on after the new year, especially. But I don't think there's someone you pencil in the West compared to the East, Pro. So I don't know what you think about New Orleans and how they're playing.
No, I'm a fan. I'm a fan because of the fact that, like, I'm not a fan of trying to get Zion 35 a night. I don't think he's built like that. I don't think you can win consistently when you just throwing it to him, throwing it to him, throwing it to him. Now, he's still up there in usage. I think he's like I want to say he's top 5 or top 6 in the league. Last time I checked, I think he had a usage rate of like 28.4, which is pretty high. But like, with McCollum and when Ingram comes back and then Valanciunas doing his thing, like, you don't really have to, unlike most teams, to just give it to their best player and just get out of the way. They could just sort of put you in different situations, like McCollum handoffs, Ingram post-ups in isolation, and, and just putting them in different spots on the floor. Zion, rolling them, posting them. So he can give you a lot of different looks, and they'll spread you out. They've got shooting, they've got youth, they've got toughness in Valanciunas. Their bench is pretty good. Larry Nance Jr. sort of rekindled his career. He's given them like 9 and 5 off the bench. I mean, he's been good. I just really enjoy watching him, and I think Daniels is giving him about 19 a night minutes wise, and I think he's going to get better. And they just sort of throw different guys at you. Najee Marshall is even giving him some added help. So I like them, Bogues. I think it's a good pick of the week. I think they're playing hard. They're talented. I don't think they gave them much of a chance, last year. And, now Zion's healthy and, healthy-ish and, just coming back and trying to do what he's doing. I think he's played in about 80% of his games this year, which is a milestone for him because he's obviously had those injury issues in the past. No, good team, man. They're a fun team to watch. I agree with you with the West. I don't see that, how everyone's playing right now. I don't see any clear cuts. Like, Memphis is tough, but they're dealing with their injury stuff. Obviously talking New Orleans, Denver's sort of up and down. Phoenix is dealing with their deal. Dallas is trying to get their footing. Clippers can't get healthy. So it's a toss up. I think that, the West is definitely open, and I think that there's definitely opportunity for these guys.
And guess where New Orleans, if you follow this podcast for a couple of years now, guess where New Orleans is playing Zion now, Pro?
5.
The 5.
Shocker.
For stretches. And we were both on that bandwagon 2 years ago when they wouldn't play him at the 5. They've now finally unlocked him at the 5. It creates, like you said, and they can do that probably now a bit more comfortably with the length they have on the wings in Herb Jones and Brandon Ingram and Alvarado picking up full court. But one thing I noticed, just some X's and O's for some people out there, that, Zion's not a great perimeter shooter. He's shooting, in the mid-20s from 3. You can knock him down and he's a streaky three-point shooter. I feel like when he knocks one down, he'll hoist a few more up and can go 2 for 3 or 3 for 4. But he generally doesn't want to do that. So with non-shooters, for the people listening out there, generally you can play off them a little bit. You can give them some space. If you've ever watched Rajon Rondo play, a lot of people would play off him. I think that's actually working against teams more than it's helping them, Pro, because, you'd probably agree with this. Rondo figured this out too. You kind of know everyone's going to play off you and get under. And a guy like Zion, everyone's playing off him knowing that he's going to drive. The problem is, because you're not up to touch, or you don't have any contact, or you're not up in his grill, he can get ahead of steam. And he's going to beat you to the spot 9 times out of 10. And he's a freight train coming down. So even if you beat him to the spot, that charge is going to hurt. You're going to feel that in the morning, right? So I noticed a trend with a lot of these teams mucking him. A muck means that you're 3 or 4 feet away from him when he's got the ball on the perimeter, but he's just picking a spot and beating guys, and he's kind of nimble. He's light-footed for his weight, and I think teams are going to make an adjustment there. I think you kind of almost have to – I would much rather prefer you kind of – half pressure him just so it's not as easy as a rip through, Pro, and not as easy as a spot to get from A to B. He has to actually make a jab step move or some sort of dribble move to get by you. Whereas right now, he's getting ahead of steam, and okay, you might get 1 charge out of 10, but those other 9, he's getting to the free throw line of scoring. It's just a little thing that I saw, especially against Phoenix these last 2 games.
Yeah, Bogues, as crazy as it sounds, in my opinion, he's not Zion's not an explosive athlete right from jump. He needs that sort of head of steam to get to that elite athleticism that he has. He's not really like freakishly long. He's big and strong. He's a strong guy, and he's, and once he gets that head of steam, though, you're fucked. Now, he has improved his ball handling, which is better. His perimeter shooting still really isn't where it should be. But I think that, like you said, if you give him that, like head of steam, you're screwed. Now he's shooting 72 from the line, which is helping him, but the three ball still isn't there. But like you give him that head of steam and you're playing off of him and you forget about him. And that now he gets the ball on like a dribble kick or what have you, or a ball reversal, and now he rips you through. And then like you said, he'll beat you to the spot. And then once he beats you to the spot, it's tough. I think you're better off just playing up to him. Not like he's Ray fucking Allen or something, but like you need to give him some, friction, and he needs to feel you, because it's hard for him to get by guys like that, in my opinion, unless he bowls you over, and he's going to get a lot of charge calls. But if you play off of him and like is a non-scoring threat from the perimeter, like you said, I think you made a good point. I think it's going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, it definitely is. But yeah, just some nice people to watch the games. It'll be interesting to see if teams adjust to that. I mean, in playoffs, I think teams will, but in the regular season, no one really has. And he's playing really well. Who do you have this week?
Orlando Magic, Bogues. I know I was messing around. They won like one game in a row.
Is it twice?
Not in a row. Not in a row, but 2 out of 3.
Not in a row, but
Bogues,
2.
They won 3 in a row. They beat Toronto twice, which isn't easy, and they beat the Clippers with Paul George. Now, they didn't have Kawhi, shocker. Seeing both those guys in the same lineups, like seeing fucking, the abominable snowman fucking riding the fucking Halley's Comet in the same sentence. But 3-0, hey, Bogues, those guys are a tough out. Like, if you look up on the scoreboard usually, and look, their record's atrocious, no question about it. They're fucking sitting at 7-20, but like, in the past month, there really hasn't been many games where they're just getting blown the fuck out. And they play teams tough. Yeah, they're not good enough to beat really good teams, but you go and beat Toronto, which is a solid team in the East. They're a top 10 team in the East right now, and they beat them twice in a row. They beat the Clippers. Those guys play hard. They play hard. Bonchero's been out a lot of the year. I think he's played something like 75% of his games finally, but he's been out, like up and down, he's been out. But those guys are, they're fucking battling, and they're a tough team. And I think it's not like the Rockets, which they have a bunch of knuckleheads together and you don't know if they'll ever get it through. Like, these guys are legit. I think if they can keep these guys together for the next couple of years, they're going to be a good team. They're not even close to that, but a team like this winning 3 in a row, and they compete every night, and you got to give those guys a lot of credit. And Mosley's done a great job with those guys. They're up every night. Bol, I mean, fuck, like, I thought he'd be playing in Indonesia right now. The fucking guy's averaging 12 and 7 and probably sort of top 4, top 5 and most improved, for the year. And I think they're a good team. And let's not forget, like, Jonathan Isaac hasn't played in like 3 years, and they're doing this without him. And they just got a scrappy team that plays hard. They play together. And look, they're not going to be hanging any banners anytime soon, but they're definitely on the right track. I looked at that and I'm like, they went 3 in a row. I got to give it to them. Shit. Like, that's a pretty good accomplishment for them. And I know, like, I think I was fucking around a couple of weeks ago when I gave it to them because they won like 2 in a row, but now they've just been competing every night. They're in almost every game they play, and then they won 3 in a row. Look, they're not fucking, they're not the 1986 Celtics by any stretch, but got to give it to them. Got to give them a lot of credit for it.
That was off a 9-game losing streak. They've won 3 in a row, so it's a pretty good bounce back week for them. And they do. I think we said this last time. They do play teams tough. They're not usually these, like, you look at Charlotte, they're a pretty easy beat, right? Like, if you show up and bring energy, you're going to win that game. Whereas Orlando, you got to actually win the game. Mm-hmm. And even some of those losses in that streak, you look at Milwaukee, they lose by 7. Toronto, the week before that, they lose by 13. They lose by 11 to Cleveland. Atlanta, they lost by double digits, but then Brooklyn, they lose by 7. So Philly, they lose by 8. So they keep games pretty close. Indiana, they lose by 1. So they're not. They've got a few. There was a few blowouts in there, but for the most part, they're competitive. So they got a bright future. They got a lot a good mix of vets and young guys that are developing. I would assume some of those vets are going to be gone. I'll talk about that a little bit later in our trade segment. But they're fun to watch, young and athletic. All right, so my weakest team of the week, I just late scratched Atlanta. Oof. They were in my barrel, in my firing barrel. They won on the buzzer to Chicago. Absolutely horrendous finish to that game. You probably haven't seen it yet, Pro, but the Bulls were down by 2 with the ball with 1 point whatever seconds left, 1 point something. They fouled DeRozan shooting a 3 at the top of the key that was well contested. Give him 3 free throws. He knocks all 3 down with 0.5 left. They come down, and then the Bulls give up an over-the-top lob to the outer block for a buzzer beater to AJ Griffin. So if that didn't go in, they would have been my team of the week. That they're an honourable mention. They've been horrible since that fallout with McMillan and Trey. It's been pretty bad. And I've got some mail that looks like McMillan's going to be gone pretty soon, Pro. We'll see if that eventuates. But some people in the know saying that does not look good. But my team that I had to go with, Phoenix Suns. They've lost 4 straight. Chris Paul's back and healthy and playing. All right, Booker's done his hammy again as of last game, 2 games ago. But they've had a horror week. When you factor in their injuries, you factor in just the way they've played. They've lost 4 straight. It hasn't been good. There's a lot of finger pointing starting out on that court, Pro, with the Phoenix Suns, which is something you didn't see from them the last 2 seasons, even though they finished so poorly last season. You didn't really see it as much till that Dallas series, really. But it does not look good. They just look really, really clunky. And this is a team supposedly primed for championship success. They got absolutely in that. There's 4 losses. One of them, it seems like Dallas is a team that completely turns Phoenix's season around for the most part. Their first loss in this 4-game streak was Dallas, 130 to 111, blown out. Next night, Boston absolutely hammers them on national television. It finished a bit more complimentary than it should have been at 125 to 98, but that was a 40-point game at one point. Then New Orleans beat them by 11 and beat them by 5 in overtime today. But they, those 3 games in there, they lost by double digits. Just don't look the same. They look like they're all over the place. They're searching for different lineups still. Our guy Landau's back in the lineup now. We'll talk about him in Aussie Watch, but yeah, it's just weird. Chris Paul's not the Chris Paul of old. I mean, he's a sensational player over the course of his career, but I don't know if you can win with him playing 30, 35 right now. And the backup's Payne, who's, I think, good, but he's erratic. So they've got some issues down there. They can't stay healthy. Booker's out now. And that Crowder misdemeanor they made, look, I get they didn't want to extend him, but from what I heard, it was him not being able to compete for his starting spot in training camp. They could use him right now. They need some toughness on that squad. They got a bunch of guys that are downhill skiers, and they don't have many that want to cross country up the hill. So they get my nod for the weakest team of the week, Pro.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I didn't have them, but I agree with everything you said. And the Jay Crowder thing, like, first of all, this should have never gotten to this point with Jay Crowder. Look, Jay Crowder, he's always been edgy. He's always had a chip on his shoulder. He's always been a guy that is very proud and sort of had a lot of pride of how he plays. And of course, he's going to be a little pissy about, starting job and all that. And this is where, look, I'm not in the building, so I don't know. But, like, this is where I think a lot of teams make mistakes when there's a little bit of a clash with a player. And instead of just saying, dude, like, how are we going to work this the fuck out? Like, look, like, we may not need you. We may not start you because we'll start Cam Johnson, but we're going to give you starters minutes. And there's going to be some nights where we finish games with you. But, like, we want them to give you every opportunity to do this. But you know how NBA teams are. They, like, they go through an intermediary. They go through the agent. They just sort of cute with the player, and and they're just sort of, and then it ends up being a passive aggressive ball of shit that ends up being fucking, all right, they send the player away. I'm not saying it's all the player's fault or the team's fault, but, like, a lot of these things could just be talked out if you just talk to them like human beings and be like, look, dude, Like we see Cam Johnson as a future player. He's younger. We get it. But we're going to play you a shitload of minutes, and there's going to be some nights where you finish for us and close without question. We need you. You need that toughness. You need that like tough guy, and that's what he is. He's their Charles Oakley, their Rodman, without being out of control. He's just a tough guy. He's not like alpha dog like those guys, but like I think that's a big part of it. And you like take Torrey Craig's minutes at the backup 4, take some of Damian Lee's minutes, take all of Josh Okogie's minutes. He's brutal. And then, like you could play the guy, he could help you win. He's a tough guy. Yeah, you might not extend him, but all these contracts are movable, Bogues. And it's funny, like you talk about the Brunson thing in Dallas, where they could have signed him a little bit more than they wanted to, and they wanted to have some flexibility, but that ended up biting them in the ass when they could have had him for 55. This Jay Crowder thing, like you could have extended him, waited till December 15th if you wanted to move him, but like this wouldn't have been an issue. Just extend him. All of these contracts.
Give him 2 years.
Yeah.
Just give him one of those Bogdanovich deals.
Folks,
give him a year or 2 years. He would have been happy with that.
In the last 3-4 years, how many awful fucking contracts have been moved? Chris Paul was moved twice. His contract, everyone said he was unmovable. John Wall got traded. Westbrook got traded. All these terrible fucking deals. He's not going to be a terrible deal. What were you going to give Jay Crowder? 2 years, 30 or whatever it was? You could move that. And he's tough. His shooting's much improved. He helps you. He's a good player. But now look at you. Cam Johnson goes out. Like when Cameron Johnson came out, like that's the first call that should have been made. Jay, what is it going to take? Extension, whatever it's going to take, we're going to do it. We need you. I don't know why Jay Crowder's just still sitting out, and you're not going to get much right now for Jay Crowder. You'll get something, but you're not going to get anything great. And yeah, I mean, with the Chris Paul thing's been up and down, and the backup big deals. But I know we talk about Wandale a lot, but he's a better player than Biyombo. Like Biyombo, like we talked about it. If you're gonna play like in the finals against fucking. If you're going to play against Philly in the finals and you have to deal with Embiid, yeah, Biyombo is a better matchup than Jock is. Then maybe if you played like Towns or something like that, yeah, like you need that physicality, that defense, and Biyombo's a better defender than Jock. But Jock's smarter. He can, he's just a smarter player. He's more of a thinker, a better off the ball player. He could do more, especially offensively, and I just think that that's big, and I just think that whole deal with Crowder, I think it really cost him. And like Cam Payne is an okay player. He could score on some occasion, but they're just missing something, man, and they've just been up and down. So yeah, they're definitely team of the week for sure. That's a good call.
Who you got?
Miami Heat. They lose. They lose to San Antonio. No Jacob Poeltl. They lose to them, and they also lost to Memphis without. They lost to Memphis without Ja Morant the other night in shorthanded team. I think they didn't have Clark. I forgot who else they didn't have, but they didn't have two of those three, and then. I want to say they lost 3 out of the last 4, Bogues. Hold on, let me just make sure I'm not messing this up. So they lost there.
Yeah, 3 out of the last 4.
Yeah,
Memphis, Detroit losses. They beat the Clippers, and they lost to the Spurs.
And they lost to the Spurs, right? So, yeah, just look, they've had issues all year, and they just don't have any consistency. And I don't know. I think it's time to sort of start thinking about all right, like. We've got Biyombo, yeah. We've got Adebayo, who's our guy. Jimmy Butler's getting up there in age. We could still get something for Butler. We could still get something for Lowry. I think, in my opinion, you should just move on from it. Or you're going to have to deal Tyler Hero and get something. Because Tyler Hero will probably bring you back the most assets, that's not Bam. And I think that Hero will give you the most assets because he's obviously putting up, his 20 and 6, and he's young, and you can get something for him for sure. And going forward, because if you're going to make a big move, if you're going to make a move for Durant or something like that, where I think that like a Tyler Hero plus some other assets, maybe get off Duncan Robinson, but like, they're going to have to make a move. They're not a good team right now. They're not a typical Miami Heat deal. Like they're 12-15 right now as we speak. And, I just don't see that thing, upticking to the point where they're going to be a top 3, top 4 team. And if they don't have home court advantage, I think it's going to be tough for them. I don't think they have it offensively. I think that they can get out of a round possibly, but like, how it is, Bogues, especially if you get into that second round deal, to advance past there, you need like that second really big time go-to scorer. And I just don't think they have it. Like Hero's up and down with the scoring. Butler's up and down with the scoring. I just don't think they have that like big time perimeter threat. Oladipo's finally starting to play, but I don't think he's going to really make a huge difference with them. So, yeah, I'm just not sold on the Heat. And you know me, I'm usually fucking Mr. Miami Heat, and I don't see it up to this point. I don't see where they could really kick into high gear,
They're just, I think they win the award for most inconsistent team of the season so far. They'll have a week where they play really well, and it looks like they're turning it around, and then they plummet back down. They're just all over the place. Their identity of probably the last 2 or 3 years isn't there anymore. Probably the Eastern Conference Phoenix Suns really. It's kind of all over the place. Probably way worse because they're not winning games. But to lose those 3 games and 2 of them were at home is pretty bad news. You got to beat those teams, especially if you're in the position when this isn't the Miami Heat that were a top 4 team as of last season when you can afford to drop one on a lazy night versus San Antonio. They're fighting for a play-in right now. they're dropping games to some bad teams. So I agree with that. I think they're definitely struggling. It'd be interesting to see if they look to make a trade. I mean, there will be some candidates out there. They need something. They need a bench punch for sure. I think Hero now starting. They lose a bit of that bench scoring, and it just does not look good to the eye, bro. So good call on that one. All right. Real quick, rest in peace to Paul Silas. Passed away today, I believe, or late last night. An NBA veteran who played and coached numerous teams. He played as well, 1,254 games played for 9.4 points and 9.9 rebounds a game with 2.1 assists. One of the few players that got to 10,000 points and 10,000 rebounds. So his son's still involved in the league and floating about. And yeah, you never want to see an NBA legend pass, but he was of age, and wish Paul's family all the best. And I know a lot of people in the NBA family were. I was never really involved with him. I don't think you were either, Pro, on a working relationship with any teams. But I played against many of his teams where he was a coach or an assistant, and everyone that speaks of him speaks very highly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was a household name with the Celtics. Obviously, playing in the '70s and 2-time All-Star. I thought he was a Hall of Famer. I guess not, but. I work with his son, Steven. I met his son, Steven, who's obviously the head coach of the Houston Rockets. I met him a long time ago, probably 25, 26 years ago when I was just starting out in basketball. A close personal friend, his son they were close, went to school together. And then, seeing him along the way, I met Paul through Steven, working with him with Dallas. I worked with Steven, I think for 2 years in Dallas, if I'm not mistaken, really good person, good human. And I met Paul. Paul came around the facility once or twice, and, good guy. I've known people that worked for him in Cleveland when he coached, I think he coached LeBron. He might've been LeBron's first coach. And, when I was at the Celtics as a scout, he was, people, I knew people that worked for him. Great guy, great human. And again, he was celebrated in Boston, just being one of those guys. And, it's you never really. This is a hard part of life growing up, Bogues. It's a cruel thief sometimes, man. It's just it steals people like this. He's a great person, and no one's ever had a bad thing to say about the guy. And it's hard to see the guy pass.
Wish his family all the best. All right, Golden State Warriors president of basketball operations, Bob Myers, is on an expiring deal. Myers and the team haven't been able to come to an agreement on extending his deal. Myers refused to discuss his status beyond saying my entire focus is on the season and the team. Golden State owner, CEO Joe Lacob said, "We love Bob and hope he's here for a long time." What do you think's going on here? Do you think it's just a bit of leverage? It's interesting they haven't got this done yet. With 6 months to the end of the season, or to the end of his contract, I know that the Lakers are very heavily involved in the day-to-day with the Warriors. So who knows? I mean, I know Kirk Laker, who is the son of Joe, is somewhat being groomed to be one day a guy that's going to run a team. Could that be the Golden State Warriors? Who knows? But he's definitely ticking all his boxes, doing stuff with the G League, being around the club on a day-to-day basis. Is that maybe the position? I don't see Bob leaving. I just don't. But this looks like it's a leverage situation, considering you read the wording. That's what everyone says. Are focusing on the team. And Joe Lacob saying the same thing. We love Bob and hope he's here for a long time. So could it just be the figure that Joe Lacob has put out is not good enough for Bob, or do you think he could be out of there soon?
Bogues, look, he did a fantastic job putting that team together, and just sort of, I think he's done a tremendous job. A lot of times when agents become GMs, you always think there's not really a high success rate with that. And I think he's handled the job well. He's brought in some good people. He took some chances, and look, he's helped take that organization to an all-time level. The only problem is, though, when you're talking about rich guys and you're talking about rich guys that have sons involved, it's never a good thing. In the sense that, if you're a guy, especially with the team sort of plateauing a little bit, and there's not really a lot more that you could do with that team unless there's some free agency stuff that you do or some trade things. And then you have a son of an owner waiting in the wings, I guess they call it. It's never great in the sense that, for your job security. Look, I think they should extend him. I think it's a no-brainer. But usually people like that, you never hear about Pat Riley unless he does it. You never hear about Hall of Fame type people that has won multiple championships as a coach or a general manager getting into that last year of their deal unless they want to play the field. And Myers doesn't seem to me like the type that wants to play the field. So I don't know. I have no idea. Like I said, with the Phoenix thing, I'm not in the building, so I can't really tell you. I don't know. I have no intel on it. But when you have a son that's, of an owner that's been in it, it's, you just got to scratch your head, and say, and look the other way, probably hold your breath before you start your car in the morning, like those old mob movies. But I don't know. I think that definitely would tell me that maybe they are at some point ready to make a switch, but who knows? I have no idea. What do you think, Bogues?
I think he'll get a shorter term deal.
Yeah,
because I think Kirk's in line to take that job one day. It's just a matter of when, in my opinion.
Right.
And look, Kirk has, whether people are going to have an opinion one way or another of nepotism and whatnot, that he is the owner's son, but at the same time, he's putting a lot of work towards it as well. So you can't. Obviously, he's in a position of, I hate using the word position of privilege because I just hate that phrase, but he is because he's the owner's son, and he's obviously had the opportunity to be able to get in that process much easier than most people. But that's just the way life goes. But I think he's also putting in the work. So I don't think this is a case where, he woke up as Joe's son and he's the job. So I think Joe's actually making him tick all those boxes like anyone else should to work his way up. But yeah, my if I'm a gambling man, I would just say probably a 2, maybe a 3-year deal. I don't think it's going to be a long term, and then I think they might move on. And that'll probably transition out with Steph too down the line. Like maybe Bob wants to go in tandem with Steph, and a lot of GMs do that. That superstar leaves, the guy that they've won everything with leaves, they leave too because they know it's a full rebuild process now where you don't have those veterans in the room anymore. So will be interesting, but interesting stalemate there. Trade market real quick. Cam Reddish is available, pro. Are you shocked by that? No one's really shocked by that. He came over from Atlanta to New York last season. There were reports, and we both heard that Thibs didn't even want him, and so much so as it went with a little bit of a back and forth with the front office. because he didn't want to play him, which is never a good thing for the player, but he hasn't really worked his way into the rotation. So he'll be looked to probably move. I don't think that's a big deal. Kyle Kuzma's come up as wanting out of Washington, wants to move to a bigger market. That's a shocker as well, but there is a chance. I think he's a free agent going into this season. There is a chance for him to be traded before the deadline. He'll be in the market for approximately $20-odd million a year in free agency. Do Washington pull the trigger on that? Who knows? But there's word that he wants out. He could, there's some suitors such as Sacramento and a few others that are kicking the tires on that. See if he moves on. Bogdanovic signed his extension with Detroit, Bojan, that is, but he's on the market now, which is interesting. I think he can really help some teams. A team like the Lakers, one of these teams that really needs some bench scoring and a shooting presence for them. Gary Harris, Terrence Ross, and Mo Bamba. So we spoke about earlier Orlando playing well. They're Gary Harris and Terrence Ross at least are the veterans in that group. I'm surprised Terrence Ross hasn't been moved previously for a playoff-bound team around the deadline last season. I dropped that name. And then your guy, Mo Bamba, those three are available. Spurs have Pirtle, McDermott, and Josh Richardson available. I think most of the Spurs are available, bar their probably untouchable 2 or 3 guys. Eric Gordon is available, and I think he'd be I think he's probably the best. Him and Bogdanovic, in my opinion, that's not including Kuzma because we don't know what Kuzma's doing, but as far as a team that can get on a veteran team and give them that extra bit of oomph to get through maybe a second round or conference finals or a conference finals to a final, so he's available. And Gary Trent Jr. apparently is being floated by Toronto. They're not too sold on keeping him long term. So they're the names, Pro. I don't know if you've heard any others, but what do you think about that list?
I mean, it's a solid list. I think that most of those players that you mentioned are sort of players that are wanted to be moved. I think that most of that stuff's true information. The only issue with Eric Gordon, I think he's got another year left on his deal after this one for $20 million. So it'll be tough to sort of make a deal work with him. I mean, it's not like mostly a guy like him you'd want to take on the last year of a deal. Gary Harris, I don't know, like he's been up and down with his injury issues. Terrence Ross, Bamba, I think Podol is one of the better names in that list. Gary Trent Jr. as well, but I think Podol's going to get moved to a contender. Like if I'm Dallas, I'm looking at that. Really good interior defender, roller, screener. Doesn't need the ball in his hands. So, but they get the Christian Wood, so I don't know if they'll do that. Kuzma, I could see like he's having a really good year. I think he's 20-7. But again, they're not really going anywhere. It'd be interesting what they get for him. The Gary Trent Jr. That's been an interesting one because I thought he's been a really solid player for them and keeping, he's doing well. I'm surprised he's sort of on the block and what they're going to do if they do deal him. But yeah, I mean, those names are pretty good. Those are a pretty interesting list. And the Cam Reddish thing, I just don't understand it. You hear more about Cam Reddish than you do fucking LeBron James, for God's sakes. Like, everybody's talking about, request and trade, this trade, that trade. The guy averages 8 points a game. He's he's an end of a rotation player. I never saw the big thing. Even coming off of the draft, I just thought he was a so-so prospect. But everybody makes a big deal of this. And, it's sort of like the prom queen in 2007. Everybody forgets. No one cares anymore. But everyone's like, Cam Reddish, Cam Reddish, Cam Reddish. I just don't know what you're going to get for Cam Reddish. Like, if you're a team and someone offers you Cam Reddish, what are you going to give? Second round pick? That's what exactly. He's worth to me.
It's just funny because he's come up every trade deadline the last couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But he obviously in a crappy situation for him individually. Thibs isn't a fan. Be interesting to see if he ends up somewhere where he can prove his worth. But an interesting list of names. We never know the temperature of the trade market. Some years it's quiet leading in and it goes bang, and then the years where there's a lot of hype around it, there's going to be a lot of moves, a lot of expiring contracts, and then nothing happens. So I think this will be in between those two. I think there'll be some moves, but I don't think there's going to be any absolute blockbusters this season. Let's get into our Australians of the week. Paddy Mills, Pro, hasn't played since November 25th. Brooklyn rested basically their whole squad versus Indiana, and he goes for 24, 6 and 6. So only played one game this week for Paddy Mills, but just I want to discuss this one because this is a guy that hasn't played for almost 3 weeks. comes out and he's ready to play. His number's called. He's like, okay, coach, I know I'm going to play tonight because I think they rested basically the whole starting five. I'm going to put up a night tonight that makes you have to play me when we're healthy. And he's done that tonight. That night, against Indy. And who was the other one? Who's the other guard?
Cam Thomas. Cam Thomas.
Cam Thomas had an absolute night as well with 33. Another guy who hasn't played a whole lot when they're healthy. And he'll be a guy teams are circling, I think, that hasn't popped up. They probably don't want to give him up because they know that post this season, KD might want out, Kyrie's probably gone. He'll end up being one of their better options. But some teams, some Sharks might be circling and throwing some offers there. But great job by Paddy and great job staying ready. Joe Ingles, no news to report, ACL rehab still. Ben Simmons only played one game. He's back on the injury list. He had 6, 6, 7, and 4 steals in the one game this week. Matisse, 2 games, only 4.5 points, 1.5 steals, half an assist and half a rebound, so nothing to really write home about. Josh Green, 6.5 points, 2 rebounds, 1.5 assists. His solid numbers. He's been solid throughout. Dyson Daniels, who is now starting pro. He's taken that starting lineup with Brandon Ingram out. They've moved Dyson to the point, moved CJ to the 2. It's working, like we said, 7 straight wins. Dyson doesn't need the ball. Happy to play a role. He's for the week, 7 points, 2.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and a steal. So he's been real solid for him. Daly's cracked the rotation in Sacramento Pro. He had an influential night against his former club, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Not a big night stat-wise, but a Daly night. He had 16 minutes. He had 3 points, 4 assists, a couple of rebounds, and 4 steals. And then he backed that up tonight in a loss to the Knicks with 2 points, 4 assists, and a steal. So he's cracked the rotation. Solid, nothing over the top, but he was playing 0 minutes at the start. And there were a lot of people, at least in Australia, scratching their head saying, well, he wasn't that good for United. How's he going to play in the NBA? Daly's not a player that, is a number one superstar option that you sign him for an NBL team. He's going to get you 30 points and 10 assists. He's not that guy. He's a perfect kind of intangibles guy within your squad. He's a great 2 or 3 or 4 option, or just an option to run your squad, and he's fitting that well in Sacramento. Jock Landale has found minutes again, as we discussed, 15 minutes for the week. A game, 6.3 points, 3.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists. And Josh Giddey, now our 2-time Australian of the Week, 13.5 points, 11.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 steal he averaged this week. But he was 11 for 29 from the field, especially against Cleveland, I think, was the game where he missed a lot of bunnies around the hoop. So a little bit of a struggle for him with his field goal percentage, but he still is the best statistical performer of the week for the Australians, and now he's won 2 of them. We're going to chart who wins the most Australians of the week and give them a Rogue Bogues trophy at the end of the season that doesn't exist, bro. But that's the Australians of the week. Anything on those guys?
I saw Josh Green the other night against Milwaukee, and I'll tell you what, man, he's done an unbelievable job in his development, and I think he's a top 40 player at his position, and I think that he's sort of going to be one of those guys who could really continue to get better. His shooting's obviously improved. Playmaking's getting better. I really enjoy watching him play. And I don't get to see Dallas a lot, but from what I see about him and what they've done with him, and it's done great. The Wandale thing, you know how I feel about that. I talked about 3 hours about that earlier in the show. Daniels is playing better. I haven't really seen much of Ben Simmons. Joe Ingles, that prick, he's in town. He doesn't call me, or he hasn't hit me up in about 2 years anyway, so I'm probably on his shit list by accident. And then Patty Mills, that's great to see. Like for young players and parents that are listening to this show, I apologize in advance for swearing so much if they are parents that listen to the show, but that's just sort of an example of a pro that just continues to stay ready. Here's a guy who doesn't play multiple games in a row, on some weeks, and he just stays ready. He doesn't allow not playing to sour and hit, eat at him. And then when he's actually asked to perform, he's mentally not there. He's always ready to contribute, ready to come off the bench and do anything that's going to help the team win, and done such a good job of that. That's great to see that. Again, you didn't think much of him because he hasn't been playing a lot. And then once they give him that opportunity, it's great to see that in the stat sheet. And then, the Thibault thing, I watched him a little bit. I think I watched him maybe against the Lakers, and it's great to see. I think he's a good player. I just think that the shooting thing he needs to address, because if he's not going to be able to shoot the ball, he's not going to be able to play for, most teams. And I think that in the summer, he really needs to address that. I don't know how he does it, but he needs to address it. I think that it shocks me both sometimes with NBA players that have all these other tools and they're missing the shooting piece. And they play all summer and they do this all summer. They run around all summer, but yet they just don't invest in a shooting coach and say, look, I'm going to have you lock me in this fucking gym until we figure this thing out, because this is going to the only thing that's holding me back from getting 20 plus million a year. This is the only thing, because he's one of the best defensive players in the league. He's an athlete. He's a great kid, works hard, but he can't make shots. And that's the number one, to me, I don't care if it's national team, I don't care what. Shooting the basketball for him is his number one goal that he needs to do, or he's going to be really locked out of this thing, and he's really handcuffing himself with his, with his sort of furthering his career financially and just stature in the league. It's a shooting league. You got to be able to make shots. There's no other excuse. That's the number one, if his agent doesn't have anything set up for him, I'd fire the fucking agent. He needs to be able to fucking get a shooting coach in the summer and figure this thing out. He's too good of a player not to. And that's all I got on these guys.
But he's not. Looking at his historical stats, so he played 20 minutes a game his rookie year. He shot just under 36% from three. Mm-hmm. His second year, he dropped down to 30% from three. Last season, he was 31.3, so respectable, but not off these off the world charts, off the charts of the world, whatever. But this season, he's 23%. I think a lot of it is just confidence, bro. I don't think he's shot. I've seen him. His mechanics and all that. It's not broken. I think you're right. He does need to spend some time in the gym, but I think, without making excuses for the guy, I think Doc's just, just the rotations, and he's in and out, and he's a scapegoat when they're playing bad, and then when they're playing good, he doesn't play. It's just he's still, I think he's arguably as good as a defender as PJ Tucker on that team.
Oh, without question.
And PJ had a stretch where he didn't score for 6 straight games or some shit. It was something hilarious. There was something trending about that. So I think a lot of this is, I think he puts a bit of, he probably does need to put more time in, but I think some of it is just Doc. I think it's just he's the odd man out in this roster. He's on a team with 2 guys that are ISO guys in Embiid and Harden. Harden's going to dribble the air out of the ball at times. Then you got to factor in Maxey. Melton's playing good now. They've got a bunch of different guys that can get in the lineups. He's the odd man out offensively, and now I think he's only attempting 1.2 threes a game. And 1-2 a game. So he's not really shooting the ball a lot. I think he's just putting pressure on himself to really knock down that one that I'm going to get. And then if he doesn't make it, he doesn't shoot it again. And I think that's a big part of growth and maturity. But I'd love to know, some blame needs to be placed on Doc. He's one of your younger good players that just kind of plateaued under you as coach, and questions need to be asked.
Yeah, but also in the past, Daryl Morey, if he really likes a player or liked an asset on his roster, he sort of forced the issue that he played, and he got an opportunity. There's got to be something there. I don't know. I have no intel on the information. I do know that coaches, regardless of how nutty they can be with rotations and things like that, if a guy could help them win, very few times you're going to see where even a coach being stubborn, if they feel as though somebody could help them win, that why they'll always throw them in. They're never gonna sacrifice their longevity in the league by not playing a player, even if they think that they can't help them. I don't know. I have no idea. I just know that he's been up and down. You're right. He shows some signs. You watch the kid play. I really like him. I think he should be in a rotation on most NBA teams. He defends too much. And from what people tell me, he's an unbelievable kid. So that plus that, this doesn't equal out. And the problem is, Bogues, right? If he gets moved by trade deadline, which is a big possibility, I think, of him getting moved if he's not playing and somebody sees something in him. Like he's gotta make sure that something gets done with stability. And he's got to mentally, like you say, that he's a little rocky maybe with his confidence. Well, like, again, nobody gives a fuck. Because if he's not ready for the next job, if it's Philly, if it's somewhere else, if he's not ready and he's going to have a problem with confidence, it's going to mess him up and they're going to move on from him there too. So he's got to figure it out. He's got to figure out, look, here's my routine. Here's what I need to get better at. Let's sort of claw at this. It's not going to be overnight, and let's do it. I think he could help a team. I think he's a really good player, but he needs to figure it out. And then also, like, look at his free. Like, I don't know what's going on with the shot again. I don't know the guy. I've never spent time with him. But like even his free throw shooting, like rookie year 61, then he goes to 44, then he goes to 79, now he goes to 33. Doesn't get to the line a lot. I think he's under 1 for his whole career, per game. But like he needs to find stability, even if it's like a corner 3-point shooter. Like I don't care if he emulates Corey Brewer. Remember him? Guy played at Florida. Like can finally make corner threes at the end of his career. Like just be a corner 3 guy. Be a guy who's consistently like that. I don't know. Like you said, if it's a situation where he's getting hosed from Doc and not playing when he deserves to play, then obviously it's out of his hands. But my thing is, if you're a young asset and you can help a team win, you usually find your way on the floor, and somebody forces the issue. If it's not the head coach, it's the GM. If they might be unison on this, and maybe they don't think he can play. I don't know, but he's too good of a fucking young asset for him not to be trying to play. I mean, he's so young, with like 25. I mean, he's got plenty of time, but the problem is, like, if he doesn't get it done here and he goes somewhere else, he doesn't get it done there, they become like one of those dogs you see in the ASPCA commercials with Sarah McLachlan playing in the background. They become like battered players that they lose their confidence for life. And hopefully it doesn't come to that with him because, like I said, he's a good player. I'm available this summer if he wants to hire me. I'll come to fucking Australia.
Well, he was good for the national team, so
yeah,
hopefully he can get some of that confidence back. And just looking at the guy he's losing, I mean, PJ does play the power forward position for the most part.
Yeah. But,
PJ's playing 30 minutes a night and averaging 3 points a night on clips of, what is he at, 50% from the field, 66% from the line, and 39% from 3. So 39% helps him there. Especially shooting mainly for the corners. But I think it's a bit of both, Pro, with Matisse. I think some of it is confidence that he needs to work on, and some of it is he's just fallen out of the rotation. He's not coming back anytime soon. All right, let's get on to the NBL. It was a wild week in the NBL. Started last Thursday with the Kings at New Zealand. It was a battle for first place. The Kings got that one done by 7, which solidified top spot regardless of the results for the rest of that round. Southeast Melbourne punched Illawarra. The Perth Wildcats beat Adelaide in Adelaide. The Cairns Taipans beat Illawarra by 1. Illawarra were up by double digits. Illawarra are one of the worst teams in the league. They are the worst team in the league, and they had a big lead against Cairns early, and Cairns came back and won that. Melbourne United punched Brisbane. Southeast Melbourne beat the Adelaide 36ers by 18. And then the Sydney Kings go down to the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, a rematch of the NBL Grand Final Series last season. Scott Roth getting a big win on the Kings' home floor. Sydney Kings haven't been good on their home floor. I feel like they let a lot of games slip. A lot of teams are always in games, but the Kings were up 72 to 58 going into I think start of the fourth quarter, somewhere a couple of minutes in that fourth quarter, and they end up losing 84 to 76. So they score. So I think they scored 6 points in the fourth quarter. And Tasmania just ran all over them, and it should never have been that. I felt like the Kings were in cruise control from a bad point of view, just cruising through that game, a nice lead. Tasmania tightened up the clamps and got that win by 8. So it still has kept the Sydney Kings in first place, but yeah, real interesting game. Just it was a game of runs, and it goes to show you that games are never over in the NBL. And I think, if you ask me, I think the top 5 is right about where it is. You got Sydney, New Zealand 1-2. I think that's probably going to remain somewhat the same. Maybe Southeast Melbourne could sneak in there, but Southeast Melbourne are in third. Cairns are in fourth. Tasmania are in fifth at the moment. I think that's your top five. Personally, I'm going to call it early. I think those 5 teams are going to make the top 6. The 6th spot is going to be between Perth, Adelaide, and Melbourne, and you're going to have 2 good teams missing out. So it's pretty exciting. Illawarra's dead last. I've put a line through them. Brisbane, they are second last. Unless they make a crazy run, they're 4-9 at the moment. I don't see them really making a crack for the top 6. Stranger things have happened. We'll see what happens. Do you know a guy by the name of Andrew White, pro, played at
Virginia, right?
I believe he played it. No, was it Virginia native, but played at Syracuse, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. I've heard of the name. I don't know him well. No.
Yeah, so he's just been signed by the Brisbane Bullets. 201 centimetres, athletic small forward, bit of NBA experience with the Atlanta Hawks on a few two-ways, G League and some European experience. He played mostly in the Turkish Division 1 league, but so the Brisbane Bullets have just signed him. 3-point gunner. He set a 3-point record at Syracuse with 109 threes made in a single season. So I don't know too much about him. I just read what the PR statement said, and they do need some shooting on these wings. They've got a few injuries as well, the Brisbane Bullets. So it'll be interesting to see if he can help them make a run. But that is the NBL news for this week, Pro. Let's go on with Dabble. Download the app. Have a Dabble. Dabble is betting meets social media all in the same app. On Dabble, you can follow your friends, mates, stalk the experts, or trending tipsters, scroll through your trending bets and copy them all in one tap. You can get alerts when your mates, friends, or your favorite tipsters bet. Instant alerts. Most importantly, you can follow me, Andrew Bogut, all one word, on that app. Go on and download it at the App Store. Dabble, all one word. Dabble socially, gamble responsibly. And we do thank Dabble for sponsoring this podcast and getting it up week to week. Stats, Pro, useful or useless? You ready to go?
Let's do it.
15, 10, and 5 seasons on 60% shooting, Pro. Wilt in 1967. And there's 2 guys doing it this season, Pro. Do you happen to know who they are?
You said
15 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists on 60% shooting. Only one guy in NBA history has done that till this season. That was Wilt in 1967. There's 2 guys doing it this season.
I'm going to guess. Let me see. Anthony Davis?
One's obvious. No. One's obvious. Come on, you gotta get one of them.
15, 10, and 5.
Minimum.
Minimum.
Yes. On 60% 60% shooting is the kicker.
Okay. How about, what's his name? Our boy Jokic.
1, yes.
Okay.
And the other one is a Euro as well.
Giannis? No,
Nope.
He's not shooting 60. Go ahead. Sabonis. No. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, amazing numbers. Amazing numbers. And on top of that stat, I'll give you another one with Jokic. No player has ever had a season averaging 20, 10, 8 on 60%. And Jokic currently 24, 10, and 9, if you don't mind, just under a triple-double on 63% shooting, Pro. Those useful or useless?
That's pretty useful, but I don't want to join the club of he's the first guy to do this shit, because then now we start getting down a fucking path, a rabbit hole of, this guy averages 22 and 8 on a Saturday and only averages 19 and 2 on a Friday. I think.
So are you uselessing it then?
No, they're useful. No, useful for sure. I mean,
60% plus on 15, 10, and 5 minimum, but in Jokic's case, 24, 10, and 9 on 63%. That's going to be the first time ever in NBA history if he continues on this trajectory.
That's pretty fucking useful for sure. I want to know. I want to meet the people who like search for the first guy, like the first to ever do this, because it seems like 20 guys a day are doing first ever to do this. That's what it seems like. But I'll say it's useful for sure.
A lot of virgins in the world, Pros. A lot of virgins in the world. A lot of first evers.
Good point. I'll second that.
But that was our friends at StatMuse. They let us know. They've basically got an AI algorithm that can let you know whatever you want, whatever you type in these days. So pretty amazing stuff. But I think that's useful. I think I'm surprised to see Sabonis in there. He's having a hell of a season. He's he should be an all-star this season, in my opinion. Whether he gets there or not is a different story. But, yeah, those two guys are having great seasons. All right, Pro. Post-up points leader in the NBA is – who is it, Pro?
Post-up points? Jokic?
Mm-hmm. No.
Doncic?
3 guesses. That's 1. Yes.
No shit.
Good get.
I'm just guessing.
Yes, Luka Doncic is the post-up points leader in the NBA. And every other name beyond that, as far as the eye can see, is either a forward or a power forward or a center. So
I love it.
Useful or useless?
I think it's useful. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the guy's dominating the game by posting up. It's great. I mean, I love post-up point guards since Gary Payton and, watching Magic do it, Gary Payton do it, Sam Cassell do it. It's great to see bigger point guards do it. And, yeah, fuck it. I think it's a great way for him to sort of, especially how he passes the ball, to be able to, post up. You want to double him, he could pass out of it. Yeah, it's pretty cool to watch. But yeah, I'd say it's useful for sure.
Yeah, useful. And to your point, that's the thing. Most point guards aren't taught how to guard post-ups. There's an art form in guarding post-ups. I knew it because I guarded a lot of post players, how your arm bars are, where you can get away with little shoves, what you do before the ball comes in. Point guards generally have no idea about that. So for Luka to be able to go down there and punish these point guards, who he's bigger than most of, and then the second thing is he's your best passer. So you can run so much action off that. And we see night after night Luka making that, especially that cross-court looping pass to the weak side corner for 3. It puts you in a position. So if you've got guards that can post up, I think it's just something you don't see very often. It's not taught very much, but it's kind of a curveball for most teams. So I love seeing it. And, yeah, it kind of shocked me that he's the leader in the NBA in post-up points. So useful for that one. Last one, Zion in the Pelicans winning streak. 35-8, 35-7, 29-10, 25-6, 30-15, 33-10, and 23-8. Useful, useless?
I'm going to say useless long-term because I want to see if he can stay healthy for the year. We know he could put up numbers. He's a fucking video game. But, yes, in a short time, that is a pretty impressive thing. But with him, it's can he stay healthy? So, maybe most will say that's useful. But for me, I see long-term for him. And, if he can't stay healthy, it's all for naught, I'm saying useless, but those are some hell of a numbers. I mean, he put up some great numbers with this, but I'm going to say useless until he could stay healthy for the year and play 65, 70 games in a season.
I'm going to go useful-less. I'm sitting on the fence on this one. And this is why I think they're a very good team without him already. I think they've proven they can win games without him.
Right. But
you add him a healthy Zion to that lineup that they've already built, that young, long, wiry lineup, I think they got a chance to be very, very, they are already very good, but they got a chance to really make some noise in the playoffs, if not this season, next season. So I agree with your points. He needs more longevity and more games with these kind of numbers. But, man, he's a cherry on top of what they've built there. And I like also the fact that New Orleans has learned to play without him, because I think he does get hurt a little bit with the way he plays, and they look like they can adjust pretty quickly on the fly. So as long as he continues playing like this, they've got a chance. What do you have this week?
Bogues, we talked about Miami and the issues that they're having. They will trade one of their top 3, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, or Tyler Hero, by trade deadline. Fact or fake news?
Ooh. Fake news. I think they got to run it out. I don't think Hero can go anywhere right now. He's the first year of his contract. Bam, they've kind of paid him to be their guy. And Jimmy, from all reports, they love Jimmy. So, look, I think they're going to let it run its course unless they fall to like 12, 13 and they've got really even a struggle to get to a playing game, which I don't see happening. Then I would agree that they might as well blow it up and start to look to rebuild. But I mean, even their roster pro, who do they rebuild with? Like, where are you going to move these guys to get a young star back? Stranger things have happened, but I'll go fake news. They're staying together for another play-in / playoff run.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if this was a month from now and they were really bad, I would say definitely, and probably up to about 5 minutes ago, I had fact that they were going to move, one of those three. But right now, like they're sitting at, 12 and 15, 9 games out, but they're only what, 3.5 out of fourth, from Brooklyn, and they could still do it. I still, as of now, and maybe I'll pop this question up in about 4 to 6 weeks from now, but right now I would say fake news. Yeah, I agree with you. I think they'll keep it together. I mean, look, they're a 3 or 4 game win streak away from still getting back in the thick of things. They're at 10 right now, tied with Chicago for 10. So they still got a chance, but I think Pat Riley's always going to make a move to try to to keep those teams, keep his teams relevant. I'm not sure if there's still base year compensation, where like if you sign a guy extension from a rookie deal, like it's almost base year compensation means it's almost like untradeable. As far as like I don't know if it's just December 15th you could move him, or if there's that base year. I forgot if they got rid of that rule. But if they could deal him, like to me, Bogues, would you make a run at Durant? Like, and if you're Brooklyn and but I mean, Brooklyn's 4 right now, so I don't think they're really thinking about breaking this thing up. But just let's say it goes bad in the next month for Brooklyn. Like, would you think about a package for Durant with like maybe even both Butler and Hero? Would you think about it or no?
Oh, of course, you think about it. I mean, that's if you think Duran and Riley can coexist. But
Yeah.
I mean, you have to listen for anything for Duran or I mean, I'd like to see Miami go after Kyrie somehow. I think if there's one team and one owner, one GM, one owner, one culture that can get Kyrie back to his best and completely focused on basketball, would be Miami. It's a great place to live, of course. Good weather, good culture, good vibe, good feel.
Mm-hmm.
They generally win most seasons. They're not. I'd like to see them make a move for him and even sign him in free agency. But their cap, I think, does not allow them to do that right now. So, yeah, I think the Kyrie one, KD probably not so much. But, yeah, I mean, that'd definitely be interesting. And I think both teams listen to that at that point, right? I think but with that, I think Brooklyn then has to move a couple more of their shooters. They've got Brooklyn have so many good players that just don't. We spoke about it earlier. Cam Thomas just erupts for 33, hasn't played all season. Patty's just sitting there doing nothing. They've got Seth Curry off the bench. They've got a lot of guys, man, that can really be valuable to other teams that just are in a situation where they're just too many stars in front of them. So, but yeah, overall with that Miami thing, I don't think they're making a move right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I second that. Right now, I would say it's fake news. Bogues, do you see Nate McMillan as a coach of the Atlanta Hawks past trade deadline? Fact or fake news?
The deadline's a kicker. I think he's gone by end of season. Whether that mean off season or towards the end, but I think. Look, I think if there's one more little mishap between him and Trey or any other players, I think there's some trouble there. I think there's going to be some trouble brewing, and I think there's, if they go on a spiral, which they're kind of already in right now, they've lost 3 of their last 4, and they got lucky today in Chicago. I could definitely see, as soon as you hear some of these player-only meetings happen again, I think the writing's going to be on the wall. But they were almost in first position a couple of weeks ago and playing well, and then this Trae Young thing happens with Nate, and kind of everything's just kind of gone. All over the place, but just looking at their schedule coming up, they have a lot of winnable games. Just going on their next 5 to 10 odd games. They're at Memphis, at Orlando, at Charlotte, Orlando at home, Chicago at home, Detroit at home, at Indiana, versus Brooklyn at home, and then Lakers at home. They need to go at least 600-700 in those games. I think they should beat. At Memphis, probably a loss. At Orlando, they should win even though they're playing hard. At Charlotte, a definite loss. Orlando at home should be a win. Chicago at home, Detroit at home should be a win. That's 5. You got at Indy could go either way. At Brooklyn at home, okay, either way. Lakers, so they should if they go 3-7, 3-8 in this, there's going to be trouble at the end of that. So I think a lot's going to be made of these next 10 games, but I just don't think they'll do it before deadline unless something like they literally go, they win 20% of their games over the next month and there's going to be a change. If it's something where they're forced, front office has to do it because they just suck, he's gone. But if they track where they currently are right now, they're around 5 or 6. I don't think it'll happen before deadline. So I'll go fake news. It's not going to happen before deadline. I think Atlanta should win some of these games coming up. But I think he's gone in the offseason as a bare minimum pro.
Bogues, I think somewhere Zach Lowe or somebody said that was much worse than what it was sort of leaked out to be. Now, again, I don't know what his intel's like, if it's good, bad, or indifferent. But I could see that going bad. And I'm going to say he will not be part of the. I think they're going to get rid of him by then. And look, I don't know what happened totally. We talked about it last week, but look, they're underachieving. You know how this stuff goes. Although Bogdanovich came back, I think he had like 28 today. Is that accurate? I think he had a big game today.
28 and 5, I think. Yeah, played really well. He was the guy that fouled DeMar right at the end. But yeah, he had a big game. Yeah,
so I don't know. Maybe that helps them and turn this thing around. But I know they're underachieving. They're not going to blame the player. They'll blame the coach first. And I think that this is not going to end well, unfortunately. And plus, with that problem that happened, and then maybe something else could flare up in the next six weeks or so, I think they're going to get rid of him for sure. Not for sure, but I think my opinion now is that they're going to get rid of him. I think that, again, if this thing, they're winnable games, but you don't know how bad the thing is internally. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just all talk. But with this guy, they're not going to trade Trey. They're not going to trade Trae Young, and I think that they're going to. If they can't really capture this in the next 4 to 6 weeks, it's going to be a big problem. I say they're going to get rid of him. You never really like to see that, but I just think that somebody's got to be the scapegoat. It's not going to be the player. It's not going to be the GM. I think Nate's probably going to be the guy to go there. So that's my call. And then the last thing, we talked about the Pelicans a lot this podcast. They will finish number 1 in the West come at the end of the regular season. Not in the finals, but they will become regular season number 1 in the West. Fact or fake news?
I have to check. I got to try to cheat and check their strength of schedule.
Please do.
But in touching on that, if they finish first in the NBA Pro, there's another trophy. I forgot to mention this earlier, Pro. Do you know that?
What do you got?
Well, you now get a trophy, Pro, in the NBA. If you have the best record in the regular season, there's a new trophy you get from the NBA.
Oh, boy.
So
what is it?
I think Adam Silver, you get a trophy for the best record in the NBA. It's just I can't remember what it was called, what the trophy was called. But, you get a brand new trophy. So Adam Silver's got to have a deal with one of these trophy makers. Something's going on. There's what is it? Eastern Conference champions, Western Conference champions. Soon there's going to be
that's right,
division champion. Yeah, but there's now a trophy for the best record in the NBA. I think there's no need for a trophy, Pro. If you're the best record in the NBA, you get home court advantage, right? So that's your trophy. You get to win a championship. All right, strength of schedule for the Pelicans, 18th. Ooh. So, based on the analytics and all our gurus out there, their schedule has not been the toughest, so I'm going to go fake news. They're not going to finish first, Pro. What do you got?
I'll say number 1. I'll say they will. I mean, look, Golden State, you never know what's going to happen. They might just cruise into whatever they're going to cruise into. The Clippers.
Memphis is the one.
In there you go. That's right. Memphis. But, Ja Morant's he hasn't been Mr. Durability either, throughout his NBA, short NBA career. So, you never know. I don't know. I sort of like what New Orleans is doing right now. I don't jump on bandwagons too often, but, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't think they're good enough to win an NBA championship this year, but in the regular season where, some teams just sort of put it on cruise control a little bit, get into the playoffs, get home court, try to get at least 2, 3, or 4, 5 at least, and then at very worst, and then just sort of do what they got to do in the playoffs. I still think they could, but it is very close right now. But there's really not a clear-cut team that I'm like, yeah, they're definitely going to be the best team in the league.
No, so open.
Yeah, and Golden State, for as up and down that they're playing, they're only 4 games out. Clippers are 3.5. With those 2 guys, you just never know with their health. There's a bunch of teams that are sort of still in the thick of things. I would say the only teams that are really out are San Antonio and the Rockets right now, and I think everybody else sort of has a fighting chance to get, to sort of get in the top 5, top 6, top 8 sort of situation.
Yeah, I agree. The West is wide open, and just for context, for people that are probably wondering, the teams that have had the toughest schedules thus far: Detroit Pistons at 1, the Bulls at 2, and the Mavs at 3. So that's good news for them. They're 13-13. They haven't played their best ball. Mm-hmm. They're not where they want to be on the standings, but they've had the toughest schedule in the West. Rockets 4 and Trailblazers 5, and the easiest. This is alarm bells for a few teams. The Clippers have had the easiest schedule in the league.
Ouch.
As of now. Nuggets second easiest. They'll be okay though. But the Timberwolves third easiest, and they're 13-13. So just some food for thought. I mean, these things aren't concrete, but I think New Orleans will fall down based on Memphis possibly jump in them, and I just can't call the West right now, so that's why I'm going to go against the grain. But I do love New Orleans. So that wraps up another week. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Pro. We will do one more episode next week, Pro, and then we will let Pro have his Christmas dinner. I'll put a turkey in the oven. We're going to take Christmas off, so we'll be off for a week. So we'll come back towards the end of the new year for another episode. But one more episode next week off, and then we'll be back that following week. So thanks for joining us at Hoop Consultants for Pro, at Rogue Bogues on all your social media forums. Tell your friends about this. We need more. I want to get greedy. We need more listeners to listen to our Hyperbole, and we'll see you all next week.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.
Let's get Rogue.